Me, I'm just a lawnmower. You can tell me by the way I walk.
Well, hello, welcome to the video. This is about music I hate. If you stick around right to the end, you'll see some things that you may not want to see. So I just warned you. Also, I have suffered for my art because before I made this, I re-listened to all the stuff I'm going to slag off, so...
Stand aside, or his suffering will have been for nothing.
Let's have a bit of background first, shall we? There are two types of music lovers, in my opinion. First one is like me, who enjoys the live experience, watching a band, watching the showmanship, being part of the action, being there, being excited. And then there's the person who I think is more of a record collector, who basically treats the records and CDs as objects, and they expect the live show to faithfully reproduce what they're hearing on their CD or record. I've never been one of those, and so there's a guy on here which I like watching his videos, a very well-spoken man.
So I still feel it's a gorgeous oral mosaic of chilled outedness.
The sort of music that the classic album review guy likes and I like don't necessarily coincide, I'm afraid. A little bit. There's a bit of a Venn diagram there of, I don't know, Paul Simon, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, and it does not include people like Genesis.
Genesis is a band whose discography is full of so many twists and turns and shades and different colours.
Before I get started on Genesis, I should say that this is nothing personal. I'm not attacking your taste in music if you happen to like these bands. I'm just saying what I think and why. So let's not get involved in any problems and don't unsubscribe or stop watching. This is entertainment. I don't know if you noticed. I'm supposed to be entertaining. I know I'm not, but that's the idea. But let's continue talking about Genesis. And I'd say that I never really got into Genesis because I never got anything from them. Normally, when I watch a band, I like to listen to the words, tap along to the music. If I don't like the words or the music or whatever, then I don't tend to like the band. And with Genesis, I think what it was all these people had no experience of life, certainly not of my life, and they all were at public prep schools. And by the way, if you're not British, public schools are basically private schools, fee-paying schools. And so they were private infant schools, and then they went to prep schools, which were like fee-paying, and then they all went to Charterhouse, which is where they met. Basically, to have a child at Charterhouse is going to cost you £1,000 every week of the year, which obviously is more than £1,000 per week. They came from rich backgrounds. They had no experience of life. I think people generally think that Selling England by the Pound was the best Genesis album. If you don't think so, then again, I don't know, because I've listened to most of their stuff, but to me it's very twee. The words are frankly ludicrous. Tell me where progressive rock was never my thing. I didn't mind Jethro, Tull. They had good songs, they had nice music, but I was never a huge fan, but I didn't mind them. I think I went to see them once or twice. In fact, I worked with Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull at the Nostell Priory Festival. I was doing security, and this must have been in the early 1980s. I think they did two festivals, and Jethro Tull headlined one of them. My friend Johnny Jones was in charge of security and various things, and he put me, for some reason, on top of this porter cabin, which was being used as a dressing room. And I walked up and down and kept my eyes out for anybody starting fires and that sort of thing. And eventually, Ian Anderson didn't speak to me, even though I was actually on top of his dressing room. He called for the organiser of the festival, who came, and he told the organiser of the festival that he didn't want me on his roof because it was annoying him, me walking up and down. Normal people might just have opened the door and shouted up to me, "Oi, stop walking up and down on my roof." But no, he had to call the festival organiser, who then had to speak to the head of security, and it all came down to me in the proper way. And I was told just to get off the roof, so there you go. But anyway, back to Genesis. I have listened to their music. I have seen them actually twice, and I don't think I managed to stay for a whole show. It's just, it was overblown. I had no interest in it. I can understand people who like it, you know, Mr. Record Collector, whatever. I can see where he goes with this, but it's not for me, okay? And who's next then? Well, I'm going to surprise you yet again and say Cream. Now, Cream were one of the biggest bands of the 1960s. I obviously missed them because I was at school when they were so happening. I obviously heard the singles on the radio, and I think I heard a few albums, but I was never really into them that much as I was into various other things. I mean, Hendrix I really adored.
Are you out of your mind? Pull over, you haven't got a license. No, I'm making time.
Cream, not so much so. And in retrospect, I think it's because I don't think that the guitarist, Eric Clapton, expresses himself, his soul, when he's playing. Or maybe he does, and that's the problem. Because I think that the fact that even though he was all drugged up and stuff, and he went off and spouted racism in was it the 70s?
I did really offensive things. I was a nasty person, which I say in the movie. A nasty person.
Focus on an incident that you're often reminded about.
Yeah.
In which you say you were semi-racist. I mean, you were racist on stage,
yeah,
weren't you?
Full tilt, yeah.
The fact that Eric Clapton had those kind of thoughts in his head and his heart suggests to me that maybe we're not on the same wavelength. He's very good with his fingers. He knows what chords to play and when. And that's a lot of the stuff with these bands that I'm talking about now. I mean, it might be the same thing with Genesis. They all know how to play. Cream, I never really got, because to me, they weren't giving me the emotional support I want from a band. So that's Cream. Just at this point, I'd like to say that if you're enjoying this, just like it, press the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and share it with your friends. If you want to inflict pain on your friends or anybody you don't particularly like, send them a link to this. See, it makes sense. And now back to the music. And who could be next? Well, next is Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Now, Led Zeppelin, I did like them, don't get me wrong. I can remember my friend Andrew Patterson took me to his house one Saturday after something that we'd done at, I don't know, was it an art club or something? And he played me on his stereo system. It's the first time I'd really heard stereo, because the record player I had was actually mono, because it was a bit cheaper. He demonstrated the Led Zeppelin 2 album in stereo, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And I went off and I bought a stereo player for myself from my Saturday job at Woolworths. So I think Laurie, the guy who ran the record shop, whose daughter was in my A-level class at the same time, Lindsay Dale, who ran the record shop, Dale's in Tenby, I think he let me pay it off in instalments, which was very nice of him. Led Zeppelin, I like some of their stuff, but I had this feeling, because I can remember playing a Small Faces track.
Hey woman, you need cooling. I'm gonna say you need cooling. Baby, I'm not fooling.
And it's practically identical. And then I heard that Jimi Hendrix didn't like them for this very same reason. They basically stole everything that they did.
I'm dazed and confused. Is it stay, is it go? Am I being choosed? Well, I'd just like to know.
The song Dazed and Confused was written in 1967 by a very obscure folk singer in the States called Jake Holmes. On the album, it remained credited to Jimmy Page, no mention of Jake Holmes, up until Holmes won an out-of-court action in 2010. On the album, it's now credited to still Jimmy Page, but in brackets, inspired by Jake Holmes, which I think is maybe not very fair, but what do you think?
Been dazed and confused, so long it's not true.
And as well, there was all the posturing, there was the Peter Grant side of it. He was a nasty man, and they had this roadie guy Richard Cole, not to be confused with the BBC broadcaster, the Reverend Richard Coles.
And we had to thrash ourselves with birch twigs.
Was mainly not so much a roadie as an enforcer. He was a muscle man, and at various things I went to, he was in that circle, and it wasn't very nice. And again, the members of the band, mainly Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, I never had good experiences when we met. I mean, we didn't meet and chat. It was like I would be somewhere and they'd be there, and I basically get bad vibes off them, if you know what I mean.
I was at an Alice Cooper thing where 6 people were rushed to the hospital with bad vibes.
Music I quite enjoy, not all of it, but as it went on, I enjoyed it less and less. My peak of liking Led Zeppelin was listening to Led Zeppelin 2, as I say, and the stereo effect. And there you go. That's why I would say that I hate Led Zeppelin, but I'm not their biggest fan, shall we say. Well, the next one is The Who. Now, my dislike of The Who is quite well known, because I mentioned it a few times. More jokingly, I do say things like, Roger Daltrey as a fish farmer and Pete Townsend and all this, right? I never thought that their music was more, I suppose it was, the mods really liked it, and that might have been it, and Quadrophenia. I never liked Quadrophenia, because again, Pinball Wizard as well. It all seemed, I don't know, it never seemed to me to be things I could relate to. Well, basically, The Who passed me by. I mean, when I listen to some of their stuff, like Boris the Spider, I have to switch it off, which again may be a bit harsh. It's probably me. If you like The Who, you're entitled to like The Who, and they're great. I just don't like them. Even things like I Can See for Miles.
Far away, I saw you holding lots of other girls, and you got the nerve to say it.
It just goes on and on and on, and as it goes on, I start thinking, do I like this? I don't like this. I do try to like The Who, I must be honest with you, and I've tried over the years to like The Who. They were like a big archetypal band of the time. When I was growing up, they were in the top 5, and now they're in my top 5. Who's next? The last band I'm going to talk about is Jefferson Airplane. Now, Jefferson Airplane, again, it's this thing where I've listened to their stuff. There's the odd song here and there I quite like, but I can't get into it. And later on, I did put on Jefferson Starship, as it became, featuring Paul Kantner, who was an original member. There were more original members along the way, because I put them on quite a lot. And there's a guy called Michael Gaiman, who was their manager, who was a very good salesman. He's from California, I think, and he could basically talk me into doing anything. There was always a problem with Jefferson Starship. Either one of the people that was supposed to be in the band that would build hadn't come along, or I can't remember now. There were various things that happened. And Paul Kantner was not well by this time. After every show, he had to have a glass of milk and cookies. Yeah, I had to go and buy cookies, which fortunately they sold pretty awful ones at Sainsbury's around the corner from the 100 Club, which is where I normally put them on. They obviously were groundbreaking in their early days. By the time I was putting them on, you could see, I mean, they had a great singer who obviously wasn't Grace Slick. I think her name was Kathy, and she was really good. And the band were good. Basically, the members that weren't in the original band were good. The ones that were in the original band, and there were a few, and I can't remember their names apart from Paul Kantner, who was the main guy. I mean, he, for a main guy, just did the talking and stood in the background while the people who were also in the band did most of the music, which I notice is something that with these legacy bands, that's what tends to happen. It's the people that they get to play with them who do most of the music, and they're just there to basically be authentic and to add to the experience. Paul Kantner died, unfortunately, so R.I.P. Paul. And well, that's it basically. Thank you for watching this, and see you next time. Bye.